Hello and welcome to Logic for the summer. My name is Tim McKenzie and I will be your instructor. This course is going to examine how we think. It's going to examine how human thought or reasoning works. Logic is the study of reasoning, or the study of right reasoning, study of arguments. And basically what logic does is it attempts to show how humans reach the conclusions or the points they're trying to make. They take the facts, you make a series of statements, and then you work those together in order to reach some conclusion. And logic is essentially the study of how you reach those conclusions, whether or not what you say actually reaches that conclusion. Now, we'll talk more about that throughout the semester. We'll go with different methods to examine the strength of one's arguments, but basically we're going to be looking at whether or not the statements we make can actually prove the conclusion or the point we're trying to make. Now, to begin with, this course is much shorter than a traditional semester-long course. The course is only 7.5 weeks long, with the final project being due at the end of basically the 8th week, or week 8. Typically in the semester there's 16 weeks and then there's a finals week, and actually if there's a spring break it's actually 17 weeks and a finals week. So that could be anywhere from 17 or 18 weeks from the day it starts to the day you finish up with finals week. So as a result of that, since we're actually less than half the time, we have to move fairly quickly, and so this course will move very quickly. I think you should be prepared for the fast pace of the course. If you don't think you can keep up and put the time in, then you kind of need to evaluate that right now. But at the same time, one of the benefits of doing it in this manner is you can put a little bit more focus, spend a little more time, and a lot of times people don't take as many courses during the summer, and sometimes just kind of constantly working on it, doing a little bit each day is beneficial. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this course is modular in format. Now, during a regular semester, each module, you would have a couple open at a time, and the idea is that modules are sort of like, modules is, we use this term a lot in online here at Lincoln Land as well as a lot of schools, but the idea is like a module is like something like a brick, and it can be put in many different places. As far as it goes, the module can be placed, in this format or that format. And so it's kind of its own self-contained brick, each unit. And yes, they do build upon each other just like bricks add to each other. But to a certain degree, we can move them around. We could put the module at the bottom, we could put it at the top. But in this course, some of it builds upon each other and some of it doesn't. It's kind of a mix. You need some of the information from the earlier ones, but typically once you finish the unit, other than some general knowledge and some general facts, you move on to the next one, and it's its own contained unit. It has its own exam, has its own components, and that's the way it works. Now, during a regular semester, our modules would be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks in length. Because we don't have the same amount of time, the 2-week modules become 1-week modules, and the 1-week modules, what we do is we have 2 of them in the same week due. So for example, the first module will actually be what's due Monday, June 15th at noon, will actually be modules 1 and 2. So you have to do 2 modules the first week. Now, both these modules are fairly short. The first one's basically, read the syllabus, look over the logic project, and then learn a little bit about what is philosophy and how logic fits into that category. And so then the second one is sort of beginning to look at the very concept of what is an argument, what is logic, and beginning to look a little bit at, argument types. Now, then on June 22nd, we have modules 3 and 4 that are due. But then for the next few weeks, June 29th, July 6th, there will just be one module, Module 5 and Module 6 each of those respective weeks. But then due on July 13th, Modules 7 and 8 will be due. So kind of keep in mind that there will be a few weeks where you actually have to do 2 modules, which means you have to do 2 exams and 2 sets of things. But the idea is that those modules are not nearly as involved and don't, a lot of the stuff can be done. Like modules 3 and 4 during week 2, they're both, they have a lot of facts, a lot of terms, but they're not necessarily, they're not so much about, they're more just terminology to learn. They're not so much about actually learning, doing Venn diagrams or learning truth tables and other things that can be very, difficult and take some time just to grasp. It's hard to rush through them. Now I want you to note while we're doing this that all of the modules in this course do end at noon on Mondays. Instead of having, some due on Tuesdays and some due on Thursdays and stuff like that, I want just for all of them to be due at noon on Mondays. Noon is a good time. If you want to get it done the night before, if you're at work during that time, then I would suggest you do it over the weekend or whenever you have a chance. That's just the final point. Now, all the modules are open currently, and all the modules will remain open for the entire semester. But at noon on Mondays, some of the modules become due and they close. And so, for example, on Monday, June 15th, that's a week from today, basically when I'm making this video, although I'm technically making it on Sunday, that as far as that module goes, at that time, those modules will close. You can't do any more work in them. But the thing is you can also do those modules, finish them on, June, 9th, June 10th. You could finish them this afternoon. If this is Monday, June 8th, and you're listening to this, you could finish it this afternoon, and you would be done. You could then move on to modules 3 and 4. They're both due on June 22nd, but you could have them finished by Monday. You could have them finished by Wednesday if you want to. So the idea is you can work ahead, you can work at your own pace. Now, I don't think it's probably healthy or wise to sit down and just do, everything in a week. Some of you could do it, and that's great if you can do it. The exception would be is the discussion boards require you to interact with other people, so you kind of have to wait for those other people to start contributing to those. But as far as it goes, you could do, a couple modules in, you could work ahead. My whole point of this is that, we never know what's going to come up. You could have family problems, you could have work problems, you could get sick. And so my suggestion is always be working a little bit ahead. But the other reason to work ahead is that, that some modules are more difficult than others. And for some people, certain modules, certain things are even more difficult than others. Some people absolutely hate Venn diagrams. Some people just despise them. They can't stand them. I find them to be difficult and tricky, and they sometimes just kind of they make me want to, pull my hair out because they can be a little bit confusing at times. But I don't hate them. I actually find them kind of fun and interesting to try. And then when I get them wrong, I just kind of want to pull my hair out. But then some people really hate truth tables or really hate deductive reasoning, or some people hate fallacies. It kind of depends. And so my suggestion is you work ahead, because sometimes when you get to one of those units that's really more difficult for you, you can slow down and take 9 days, 10 days, instead of having to rush through it in a week. Because sometimes I think logic is sort of like pouring water through a funnel. If you dump a bucket in, it's just going to spill all over. But if you pour it carefully, it goes through the funnel and it goes and works. You kind of need to let the water or the logic percolate. You need to let it kind of sit there in your mind, pour it in slowly. And so if you try to rush it on something you're having difficult with, it's just going to frustrate you. So if you wait till the last minute, it's going to frustrate you. But at the same time, if you need 10 days to really understand something and you only have 7, that's going to frustrate you. So if you get ahead and you stay ahead, that is probably the best thing you can do. And that gives you the opportunity that when you run into difficult things, you have a little bit more time. Now, as far as, running into problems, as far as, life problems and so on, if you have something, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm usually fairly understanding. You know, if you miss a deadline and you email me within an hour or two after it's over and say, I completely forgot that this was due, can I have a couple extra hours to finish it? I'll usually be understanding. You have something come up, your computer breaks, you know, you broke your arm, you have a kid who's sick. I'm usually pretty understanding. People will tell you I'm a very understanding person. But when those excuses become common, multiple, over and over again, my willingness to help you fades. Additionally, since this is a summer course and it is a much quicker pace, if I give you much more than a day or two of extra time, well, now you have not only, you know, the stuff you're missing, but you have the next stuff missing. If you can't put in the time and do it, or at least get ahead, you probably shouldn't be taking the course. And I mean, I would love to have you take the course, but just keep that in mind. And so my willingness to help you or to give extensions is fairly limited. You have the opportunity to work ahead. We're in a very tight schedule, so please keep that in mind when you're planning. Now, I also wanted to mention, as you're working your way through this material, I actually inherited some of the course material from the previous instructor, Marty Morris. He was a philosophy professor here at Lincoln Land for years, and it sort of created the online philosophy courses. And then he was sick. He got sick about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and he died last summer, about a little less than a year ago. And but I inherited some of his work and took over that. And so as you're pulling through and you're working through some of the examples, you might see stuff that Marty Morris wrote. Usually if there's a joke or something funny, that probably came from him. Not that I'm like completely unfunny or anything, but it's just that Marty was just very, you know, big into humor and tried to use it in every aspect he could. A lot of Monty Python references probably came from him. So, you know, that's just something to keep in mind as you're working through. We owe a great debt of gratitude to him for what he did. Now, there are some errors in some of the material, some of it what I got from him. I assume he was going to go back and edit it. I haven't always caught everything. I have some errors. I mean, you know, there's some errors. And so what I wanted to do is sort of, you know, I'm try to stay ahead and try to correct those things. But if you see an error, if you see a grammatical error, you see a spelling error, you know, you see, you know, something that's wrong, an answer that's wrong, email it to me. If you're the first person to email it to me, any error, you know, spelling, grammar, things like that, and I agree and think you're right, then I will fix it. And if you're the first person to do it, I will give you an extra credit point towards the end of the semester. So that's just something to keep in mind, a little incentive to find errors and to point them out. It not only you know, improves this for other people, but it also kind of keeps me on my toes. And I don't want to be giving out tons of extra points, but if somebody really spends some time and works their way through it and finds 80 points worth of material, I'll give you 80 points. I mean, it's not a big deal. I might cap it at like 80 points. Okay, let's be fair. All right. Yeah, I'm just going to say right now, 80 points is the maximum. Okay. All right, now, people always ask me, a lot of times people say, this is my first online course. I don't know if it is for you or not, but they always ask me, how can you be successful? And I always say, you know, there's a few keys. The first one is, you know, with an online or with a physical classroom class, you have to go every week at a certain time and be there. And that is beneficial because you have to be there. You can't ignore it. With an online class, it's easy to ignore it and let the work build up and then get way behind in the whole process. And so the thing I would encourage you to do is set aside time for this class. You know, if you set aside an hour every morning, 2 hours every morning, 3 hours every morning, every afternoon, evening, whenever it works for you, do that. Second of all, you know, when you start finding stuff difficult, don't try to cram it in there. Let it percolate. Do it slowly, because trying to cram stuff you're having trouble with in logic does not help you. And finally, if you have any questions, email me. Unlike a traditional classroom where you can just raise your hand and ask me, that's not possible here. And so you need to email me if you have a question. And don't just assume somebody else is going to ask the question for you, because I may answer their question and not answer it for you. You kind of need to say, hey, I'm not getting this, or hey, I think this is wrong, or hey, I don't understand, or this says this and that says that. You know, can you please let me know? And that's the best thing to do, is don't be afraid to email me. My statement is always, you know, if you have a question, email me. If you aren't understanding something, email me. Email me, email me, email me, email me, email me. Okay? That is the key. And finally, if you have any questions, feel free to stop by my office. I'm at Menard Hall 2259, and I am usually there on the summers on Mondays and Wednesdays in the morning as well as the early afternoon. Thanks.